Actually, welcome back to Shoot Me Straight with Eddie and Dave. Today we have an amazing guest, a character nonetheless, Byron Beplay, and we met through some training down at Stronghold Soft Solutions, and I got to know Byron over the past over 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and he's a character and soft spoken. Doesn't have much to say
ever.
Yeah, no man, but I got to know you, and I got to know what you're about, and I was looking up everything that you are attached to, and I think it's awesome. I think what you stand for is awesome. It's what we all sort of stand for. So it's an honor to have you on here. I'm glad you took the time, to come down and sort of let the audience know about you, sort of your past, and then what you're doing now.
Yeah. Oh Lord, here we go.
Yeah. Buckle up.
Full effect. Fire for effect.
So I don't know very much of your background at all, really.
So, I was, a little homeschooled boy out of Pensacola, Florida. My whole family was in the military. Grandfathers were in World War II. That was kind of what got me going in that direction. Always what I wanted to do. And then ended up joining Ranger Battalion and realizing that life was...
That's awesome.
We'll keep going.
Knock, knock, knock. So, I ended up joining Ranger Battalion and deploying a handful of times with Regiment. It's the same story, the GWAT story,
What year did you join?
So I got in 2002. So it was 2000. So I joined the Army in 2002.
Did you join because of 9/11?
No.
No?
No, not at all. I joined because of my family. It had nothing to do. 9/11 definitely added some icing to that cake.
Yeah.
But it was not for 9/11.
Okay. Yeah, I asked that obviously because it's 2002, and most people around that era, you ask them like, oh yeah, 9/11. I wanted to get in and serve. I joined prior to 9/11, in '99. So same.
Right.
Sounds like the same concept.
Same concept. Yeah. It was a family thing. Wanted to serve my country. Obsessed with all the war movies. Wanted to. My grandfather was one of the guys that went into Dachau. He wrote a very small book, mostly for the family. So it was pretty. It's just something that tugged at me, and it was like I had to do this to find worth as a man. I guess I don't know. To test myself, tried and true.
Did you know you wanted to go to the Army?
Yeah, actually, initially, no. I almost pulled an Eddie Gallagher and joined the Marine Corps. But last minute, I had this guy. His name was Colonel Chambers. He worked with my dad. I think he's like a legend in the SF community. He was in Vietnam, all kinds of stuff. He was an original MAXOC V guy, all this stuff. But he was active duty when I was, actually, he's getting ready to retire. Older than sin. I don't know how he's still in. But he was like, Byron, what the fuck do you want to do when you grow up? My dad's like, oh my God. This guy, he's one of those dudes, he couldn't say a single sentence without 18 F words, Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I want to do that. And I pointed at this sign, and it was this guy on a horse in the middle of the desert. And he was like, well, if you want to do that, you need to do this, 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 and this, and none of which had anything to do with the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. So I went to my buddy, my best friend at the time, and I said, hey, I'm not, joining the Marine Corps with you. I'm going to go this route because this person told me that this is the route I need to go. And that's the exact route I went. And out of all of my friends, I was the only one that actually achieved each individual thing up to I didn't end up going to Delta Force, which was what that photo was. It was a Delta recruiting poster. Oh, yeah. And I didn't end up going there. So.
Gotcha. And SF, Special Forces, and...
No, I didn't. I was just an Army Ranger, and that's all I did. I did that, and then I was an instructor.
I wouldn't say that's all I did. That is what you did.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty big accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the military, I was able to accomplish and achieve everything that I wanted to achieve out of it. It definitely shaped me for what was to come in my life. I think I'd be a lot worse off if I hadn't done those things, because it mentally prepared me, that perseverance, because it was a lot of different things that kind of prepared me. Like, I was diagnosed as a young child with severe dyslexia, a very rare form of it. And my mom, that's actually why she homeschooled me, because back in the day, if you went to special ed, you couldn't join the military. That was like a recruiting criteria. Yeah, so I just opened the floor for jokes.
Not my experience. When I got to the infantry, it was like they only enlisted from special ed.
But it literally prepared me, because my mom didn't give up on me. My dad, they pushed me to be better, academically. I was able to overcome that disability. So perseverance kind of became my mantra. Little did I know perseverance was going to come in a lot heavier later on, obviously with war, and then obviously with the struggles I would have later in life.
Yeah, for sure.
So you enlisted in 2002.
Yep.
Did you go straight to obviously boot camp, and then did you go straight to Ranger
No, there was a holdover
selection?
for holdover at the time, because of like the Black Hawk Down movie and all that. Everybody wanted to be a Ranger.
Yeah, that's
probably
one of the best military movies ever made.
Yeah, oh yeah. And I thought it was SEAL Team.
SEAL Team's not a movie; that's a show.
No, the SEAL Team.
Navy SEALs.
Navy. There we go. I'm sorry.
That's why I said it's one of the best. That is the best. That's a documentary.
So,
Hey, real quick, the difference between Army Ranger School and Buds would be Army
massively
Rangers,
different.
They focus more on like navigating through.
No, Ranger School is a leadership school.
Oh.
Only. There's nothing ninja about Ranger School.
Yeah.
Like, it's an open book test. You get the little Ranger handbook. You go and you are learning to, like, SEALs go to Ranger School all the time. It is a leadership school. They're not teaching you how to be an expert shooter or some ninja dude out there karate dudes and all this stuff. That's not what the premise of it is. It's teaching you skill level 1 and skill level 2 tasks, like raid and planning and all that stuff, and leading.
Yeah.
That's it. Buds
Under extreme duress.
Under extreme duress and austere environments. Buds.
I mean, Buds is the same. It's not you're not going to be a ninja out of there either. That more is
Selection.
It's a self-selection because you can't. The instructors can't just drop you. You have to ring out. You can get dropped, obviously, if you fail certain evolutions multiple times, but it's you self-select out. So if you quit, that's it. You ring the bell. So it's more, and I'm sure other SEALs have different aspects of what Buds is, but to me, it's a grind to pick the best dudes that are going to be there at the end that are able to abandon self and embrace team through the most painful, rigorous evolutions. And that's really what it's designed to. It's like, here's the core of people who stuck around through all of this, and each one of them embraces team over self. And that's what they want when they go to the teams.
Right. Yeah, I think the Navy did it right when they marketed the SEALs. The Army completely jacked up the Ranger community, because you have Ranger School, which you could be an X-ray tech in the hospital and go to Ranger School. And you go to Ranger School and like, oh, he's a Ranger. No, he's not. He's Ranger qualified. He got the Ranger tab. He didn't go through what they call, when I went through, it was called RIP. Now it's called RASP.
Is that Ranger Indoctrination Program?
Yeah, it was back then. Now it's called Ranger Assessment and Selection Program, RASP for short. And that's what makes you a Ranger. Going to one of the 3 Ranger battalions and operating as a Ranger makes you a Ranger. Yeah. There's lots of Rangers out there, half-breeds, as some people call them, that went to Ranger Battalion, never got their tab. But to be a leader in Ranger Regiment, to be a team leader, to be a squad leader, to move up the ranks in Ranger Regiment, you have to have your tab. Actually, really, to go to any other school, you have to have your Ranger tab.
Oh, got you.
So it's like, Dave, like people in the Army can go to Ranger School. So my dad went to Ranger School. He was a West Point grad, went to Ranger School. He has the tab, but he didn't serve as a Ranger in Ranger Regiment. And after I've been working with these guys now for the past couple of years and sort of got to understand their culture, and the way it works is there's a Ranger Regiment, and therefore if you work in Ranger Regiment as a Ranger, you are considered, that is like a Ranger. Like, hey, you have all the utmost respect of a Ranger. But if you go to Ranger school, get your Ranger tab, but then you go off somewhere to a regular infantry unit or wherever else, you're not a Ranger. You've just been to the school.
And most officers have it. Well, I don't know if it still is, but at one point in the Army, it was required. So if you're a West Point grad or you're going through the infantry officer basic course, IBOLIC, it was required as an officer to have your Ranger tab because it's a leadership school. So if you're a leader, you should have your Ranger tab.
Gotcha.
So you got through Ranger school first time?
Yeah, I did. So it was pretty interesting. It was, my big mouth. My dad was talking to my first sergeant once, and my first sergeant was named Edmund Seeley, and he looked at my dad and says, "Yeah, your son could definitely be the next sergeant major of the Army if he just learned to shut his fucking mouth." And and I never quite learned that. I think I learned to be more tactful, But I got sent to Ranger school, mostly to fail.
What do you mean by that?
So if you get in the Blue Book standard in a Ranger Regiment, if you don't go to Ranger school within 3 years, they RFS relieve you for standards, meaning kick you out because you didn't meet the Ranger Regiment standard, and you only have 3 years from the time you get to Ranger Regiment to go to Ranger school. And then if you fail Ranger school, you quit or you get peered out or something like that, you can also get kicked out of Ranger Regiment. So at the time, one of my leadership was like, "Man, this kid's got a big mouth. He passes everything. He's a good shooter. He's a great PTer, but he's got a big ass mouth, doesn't know how to shut up, and he's, constantly putting stupid shit before the things that are important," which is true. He's like, he'll never pass Ranger school. I went off to Ranger school, and I ended up making it through, and they're like, "Gosh damn it." So they're like, "Okay." And then it was like, "Well, what school do you want next?" And then that ended up turning into dive school and all these other schools, and I kept going and succeeding. So that's kind of how I ended up going to all these different schools in the military. But through that process and going through those learning experiences, I learned to tone myself down, but there are certain things that I didn't conform to, so I didn't really, I'm not like in Ranger Regiment, you've heard it, Ranger Games, we are not a group that people look at the special operations community and the Rangers like Captain America. We're more like Deadpool, because we play all these dumb games like, oh, you come out and if you don't have something, they'll drop you, make you do push-ups. And I never agreed with that. So, and if you didn't do it, you were a hugger. A hua was anyone that didn't have their Ranger tab or something like that. Oh, if you don't got your tab, hit the slab, flutter kicks, and it was the Ranger Regiment's way of trying to motivate the younger generation to hurry up and go to Ranger school, so that wouldn't happen to them, right? And I thought it was stupid, and I still do, and I didn't regret it. I wouldn't do it. I'm like, it's completely we spent more time hazing dudes than we were training in garrison, because I guess there's only so much training you can do. So if you're not training, we're hazing, and I just thought it was dumb. And so, it got to a point where, when I went to dive school, I was like, all right, well, if you ain't got your bubble, you're in trouble.
Meaning your dive bubble.
Right, meaning your dive bubble. The E badge, we called it the bubble, the dive.
It's a pin.
It's a pin we called it the bubble. And, I was like, none of you have that. So let's smoke the entire battalion. I don't see the premise in dropping people for something they haven't had the opportunity to achieve. And if they don't achieve it, they're getting kicked out anyways. So I had a pretty strong opinion on that, but I'm also I was very, very young with very little actually a lot of life experience when I look back on it at that time compared to the rest of the world. But when you're surrounded by absolute fire-breathing heroes and Americans, we're all the same. So my nucleus, my environment was just absolutely stellar humans and Americans. So what was normal for us was not normal for the rest of the world, if that makes sense.
Completely. I mean, it's like that in every unit. And it's not just special operations, it's like that in infantry units, and you're surrounded by a bunch of individuals that you're not all the same, but you're accomplishing the same task, or you're there for the same job, and you sort of create your own little nucleus, like your own little world, and everything outside of that doesn't really matter to you. And yeah, it's different when outsiders look in, they're like, oh, that's kind of weird, or like the stuff that you guys do would not fly in the civilian world. But
that's part of the problem.
I don't think I mean, yeah.
I mean, getting out, for veterans getting out, that is the issue.
That is an issue, yeah.
Right there.
But at the same time, I don't think it can be done any differently. I don't think you can't train people like that. And I'm talking mostly in combat units, as you know, like the infantry or special operations. You cannot run a corporate style structure and expect the same outcome when you go deploy these individuals to war. It's like, no, they have to have their own nucleus and their own way of doing things, because that's how they get the job done.
For sure.
And yes, it does not fit in well with the civilian population, but we're not meant to. We're not meant to go out there and, win hearts and minds of the civilian, even though that is like the Green Berets job, but even them, they have a tough job. So like they have to sort of switch back and forth from what I've seen. But as far as Rangers, SEALs, Marines, our job is to go and destroy, go kill the enemy. And you cannot raise people up to do that and also expect them to go to a wine and cheese party and be like, normal.
Yeah. You can't, what you're saying is you can't run a group of men that are going to go to war, get deployed for war, like you would run a company, or like you would run.
It's been tried. It's been tried over the past 10 years.
Quite literally. I have a very successful business, and one of the first things that I learned getting out of the military, actually, I have a lot of very cool jobs, and I had a lot of very successful jobs while in the military that leading up to where I'm at now. And that was the hardest thing for me to learn, was leadership in Ranger Regiment and leadership in the corporate world. There are things that do apply. Work ethic, timeliness, like execute, and just run until someone pulls your leash back. But if somebody messes up, and launching into them and destroying them does not fly. That's a walking EO complaint right there. Talking about what I did, oh, no shit, there I was in the valley, and we were just splitting skulls, and, there I had to go chop a dude's hand off to get biometrics and this, that. Like, people just go, oh, my God, and you're going to lose them. People are going to be like, my boss is a psychopath. You're opening yourself up for a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't fly. It just doesn't work. And a lot of veterans can't see that because they've spent the majority of their life being around that. That's all they did. And there's no transition. I don't care what the military puts in place to get out of the military. Oh, cool. You taught me how to write a resume. You didn't teach me how to act. You're not sending me to etiquette school,
For sure. And maybe military's not the one to really do that. Like guys like you, Eddie, and private guys too, helping.
Yeah, I mean, they've created, at least before I got out, they created stuff like the Honor Foundation or little groups like that tried to prepare guys to, and it's like a 3-month course I went to. It was once a week, and you go there, and it's really to get guys jobs in the corporate arena. They set up job interviews for you, but at the same time, even at that, they really don't go over, like, I think it's expected of you, like, hey guys, you're now going into the civilian world, you know how to act, and it's like, some of us do. I think some of us have that capability of like, okay, I know I shouldn't say certain things in social settings, right? Like I know that, but there's some people that don't, and it's not the fault of their own either. I watch and I'm like, that's how they're used to talking. They're used to being around their boys. They're used to just like letting loose and talking about what they want. And it's like, nope, that's not going to fly in the corporate world. Like people are going to look at you like you're insane. Yeah. Even though you could tell me the same story and I'd be like, yeah, of course, it'd be normal. I just think they don't do and I don't even know if it's the military's job to do that. I mean, they do such a good job indoctrinating you into the military, and then you're constantly getting indoctrinated as you go up through these pipelines, whether it's a Ranger school or Buzz or whatever else through your career. You're constantly being indoctrinated into that group, whatever you're joining next. So by the time you get out, you're like, oh shit, like, okay, I have all of this, and you have a wealth of knowledge and experience, but you are institutionalized. You are no different than a prisoner getting released out of prison 100%. After 20 years, except, I mean, in that the mindset, right? Like a prisoner gets out and he's used to, I have my 3 square meals a day. I go to my cell. I do this. I'm used to living in this habitat of prison, and then you release them, and it's like, well, go get a job and go do this. And it's like, yeah, there's going to be a really tough transition period, and it's no different from guys who spent, however how many years in the military. They have to be re-indoctrinated and sort of de-institutionalized a little bit 100%. To survive in a civilian world. And it's not impossible. It's not a hard thing, but it is tough when you add on all of the other things from war that has been going on, like TBIs, PTSD, this and that. So it's like you're expecting these individuals to try and heal themselves through all this stuff that they've seen through their career, and also sort of normalize themselves into civilian world, which is, in my opinion, it's asking a lot.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, I'm also like, it can be done. It's just, you have to have the same attitude as when you went in, which is like, I'm not going to quit. Like, yes, this sucks and it's going to be hard, but I have a no quit attitude. So,
but what happened, I don't understand. And that's one of the arguments that I've always had, is that in today's society, veterans have become some of the most, like, I'm drawing a blank on the word I'm trying to use, but the, like, me, gimme.
Well, to me, it's they victimized themselves.
They victimized, and they're I need this and I need that, and these veterans today, it's like, dude, you were a Green Beret, dude, you were such and such, you were this prestigious whatever it was, but yet you're turning yourself into a victim. You're acting as though something is owed to you, and where did your perseverance go, dude? Like, and I'm not one to talk, because I can tell you right now, I mean, I had a suicide attempt a couple years ago, and, nobody could have talked me out of it. So, and that's part of like what my foundation is about, is helping keep our brothers and sisters above ground. Actually, both my nonprofits are about that, but you're not going to save everybody, because there's no nonprofit, there's nothing that would have been able to save me in that moment. But we quit. And we use this self-loathing, woe is me, no joke, I saw this person die, I saw that person die. And don't get me wrong, I was the same guy. I did the same thing to some extent. But, like, we have to have some kind of...
Well, to me, it doesn't help, like, when our society is lifting up victimization, as it has been over the past 5 to 10 years. Like, the more of a victim you are, the better. And the more attention you're going to receive. And so you have that element going on in society. At the same time, you have these 20-year GWAT veterans getting out and then going into that society where, hey, the more of a victim you are, the more attention you're going to get. And I think some dudes sort of take that on, and they're like, okay, well, this is how I'm going to succeed, and woe is me. And I think it just gets into their own, I've seen it, they get into their own head, and it's like, no matter what you do for that individual, and I do believe that veterans do need help, like, when they get out. You can't just, hey man, figure it out, right?
Right.
We do need to have organizations like yours and there's so many others, right, that are there to sort of give them a helping hand and lift them up and be like, hey, man, let's dust you off. Here's some things. Here's some tools that you can use going forward. Call me if you need anything. But at the same time, it's like, eventually, dude, you have to do this on your own. Like, no one is going to hold your hand 24/7 and protect you because, oh, you've seen these bad things or these bad things happen to you, or now you can't find purpose. It takes time to do that. And I think that, you got to, and I tell guys, I'm like, dude, you had this mindset before you went to buds, before you went to these things, like nobody could stop you. I'm like, harness that.
Right.
And now use it again going, after you get out. But
a new chapter.
Yeah.
Like converted over to the private world. Well, I think of when you talk about institutionalized, I think of Shawshank Redemption, Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Coming out of prison for, I don't know, 40, 50 years or whatever he was.
It's a lot like that. That's a great analogy.
And he's like,
example.
There's cars. He didn't even have cars back then or something like that. And he's like, this world is so busy and I'm just used to my regimented, everything was this way. But I from someone in the private world, though, I look at someone that was a combat veteran, and it's not that I think they're a victim. It's I feel I would be one to get sucked into that because I would think, man, this person put their life on the line for me and my country, and I would totally be the one that'd be like, hey, you want some money?
Well, there's that as well, right? So there's all these great red-blooded American patriots that are like, hey, man, you served, you went to war, I want to bend over backwards and help you. Right. And I think every veteran should be grateful for that there are Americans like that, but at the same time, it's like, dude, you shouldn't be taking handouts, man. Like, you need to do it from the ground up. Oh. Like, you can take a helping hand, like, hey, man, I'll help you do this, but to take a complete handout, and I think that's what and I hate to say this, and I don't want to go down a negative road, but there are veterans out there that abuse the system constantly, 100%. That are literally just go around from foundation to foundation to foundation, sucking up all the money, taking all the handouts, making up stories. Like, they're like, oh, I did this and I did that and I'm broken and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, these people are like giving them, the shirt off their back to help them, and they're abusing the system when you do have actual dudes. And I'll say, from what I've seen since I got out, the dudes that actually did a lot and gave everything and gave their soul to that job and to the GWAT, they are the last ones to ask for anything. Yep. Like, they are silent, and they're like, I'm not taking a handout, even though sometimes I'm like, dude, you should take this handout. Like, you should take something, but that's the difference, right? So you have certain the veterans abusing it, and then you have certain veterans who are not taking advantage, and they sort of earned it, to have a little bit. And
that's why I think it's good as a private citizen to have like you, Eddie. Like, if someone is in the military or veteran and I want to help them, I would probably run it by you. To have it run it by someone, hey, is this really helping them?
We do that with our nonprofit. You have to vet people, and we have people that come in. So to give you guys kind of, in the listeners, I own, and I'm one of the founders, and I'm the vice president of the Rescue 22 Foundation. And what we do is we provide service dogs to veterans at no cost to the veteran. Giving a little context to that, and one of the reasons why we started many years ago, in one of my bazillions of jobs that I did trying to find my way when I grew up, I was in college. I was working in the ER, and I moved from Utah to be closer to my kids, and I came here and I started going to college at Northwest Florida State College, and went to the VA. They're like, hey, go pee in this cup. Went to pee in the cup, and the guy come out and he's like, dude, the only thing in this cup is copious amounts of caffeine. You're not taking your meds. I was like, no, I'm totally taking my meds. He's like, no, dude, you're not. And I was like, all right, the gig's up. I'm lying through my teeth right now to this doctor. And he's like, well, if you don't take your meds, you're AMA, against medical advice, and we're going to pull your disability. And at the time, I was like homeless, like going to college, sitting at the Panera over in Fort Walton, getting free internet, and going to the gym, and that's where I was showering, and then going to college because I was going through my divorce. literally had nothing. And so they're like, well, we got to figure something out. I was like, all right, well, give us about a week and we'll figure something out. So it took about a week and a half, 2 weeks. They get back to me and say, hey, we're going to give you a service dog. I was like, for me, I'm like, okay, wow, that's going to be awesome, right? It's free. I'm going to have a dog. That's cool. But I got to figure out my housing situation, all this kind of jazz. So then I call this number that they gave me. I'll leave the company's nameless. They're a local here. And they're like, oh, it'll be $32,000. I was like, whoa. What? Like, I don't have that kind of cash. Now, do service dogs actually cost that amount? Yeah, they do. They really do. When you train that dog up to the veteran service. But what I learned very quickly in the dog industry is most of these companies don't actually train the dogs. They teach a dog to sit, they teach a dog to stay, but they don't do anything more. They don't actually train it to a physical disability that the ADA requires. Those are the guidelines and stuff. So I ended up calling my best friend at the time, and I said, hey, dude, I'm between a rock and a hard place. I need a dog, but I don't have $32,000. He's like, and then boom, Rescue 22 was underway, and I was the first recipient of a dog from Rescue 22 Foundation, which, having no idea at the time, would spark my interest in dog training, which then made me quit the medical industry, which then ensued me starting to train dogs, and my wife convincing me I needed to do it full time. And now I own the largest indoor dog training facility on the Eastern Seaboard right here in Fort Walton. That's over 12,500 square feet. And then we have the nonprofit that's attached to it. So we're training between myself, John Devine, former Navy SEAL out in California. Our two facilities are the two main campuses for our foundation, and we service veterans all over the United States. So I talk to these veterans, and we see it, and we have to vet the veterans, because you will get guys, that have just crazy stories, or they weren't in the units that they said that they were in, and they're just trying to get a free dog. It's everything we were just talking about. So there has to be checks and balances to figure that out.
Do you run across that some, which you have some guy that's like, oh yeah, I was SEAL Team 20 or whatever, and he like says the wrong thing. And
yeah, I mean, there's dudes out there. I haven't really ran into that many people like being imposters. I ran into one here, that my first one like a couple years ago at
you told me about that
at Precision Tactical, and I was actually like entertained. I was like, I wasn't even mad. I was just like, wow, like the dude was just kept telling me he was a SEAL, and like nothing added up. And of course, I was just playing with him, giving him enough rope to hang himself. Like, oh yeah, like asking him the specific questions he should know the answers to, and he was making stuff up. And at the end of it, I just was like, hey man, like I know you're not a SEAL, dude. I was like, come on, bro. And he just gave me a blank stare, and I was like, all right, and I just walked off because I can't.
You should have messed with them more.
Get mad at,
like,
I get people like throw fits like, oh, stolen valor, and I'm like, dude,
right?
There is nothing more depressing and worse than lying about who you are as an individual. So I don't need to sit there and demean you and yell at you. Like, you're doing it to yourself, dude.
Yeah,
so
you felt bad for him.
Yeah, I do. I sort of feel bad for those people, because it's like, gosh, to have that much low self-worth that you have to make up something about yourself and your identity has to be one of the most lowliest places on earth. So I feel bad for those, and even though I don't think what they're doing is right, obviously, and especially if they're getting money and stuff from that. But at the same time, I'm like, dude, there's nothing I can do to make you feel even worse than you are. So I just tell them, I'm like, hey, dude, come on, the gig's up. And I just, walked off.
I used to see it a lot offshore. So I was, one of the other jobs I had, I was a commercial underwater welder. So I would go offshore and do all that hard hat diving, bottom walker type stuff. And, dude, it was crazy the amount of Navy SEALs. I think every single Navy SEAL that's come out of the military all works offshore. Every single one of them.
What, diving?
Yeah, they're all divers, and they're all welders, and they work offshore, and every single one of them. How many Navy SEALs were there in history? I think.
Oh, I don't even know off the top of my head. There's not
many.
There's, 10. It's
15,000.
Wow. 5%, of special operations or SEALs.
Well, if there was only 5 or 10,000 Navy SEAls, I met all 25,000 of them over the course.
Your first red flag was your first red flag should have been most SEAls that get out aren't going to go
offshore.
Back in the water. They're like, I want to get as far away from doing that job as possible. There are some outliers that love it and go do it, but yeah.
There was one. He was actually a Navy SEAL, and on the West Coast, and older guy, 90s guy, didn't do the GWAT, but he was a sat diver, and he and I would just stare at each other. He never said anything. He'd hear him. He told me, dude, it's everywhere. You just get to a point where it's not even worth even addressing anymore. And we had one guy, he was like, I was a Navy SEAL, and then I left the SEALs, and I was an Army Ranger, and then I was in Delta, and I'm like in no history, nobody in history would ever go from anywhere else in the military to be a Ranger. Everyone leaves Ranger Battalion to go be something else, right? It just doesn't happen. It's like, no, sorry, dude.
Yeah. Wow. So how long were you operational?
From 2002, 2003 to 2007.
2007, is that when you got out?
That's when I left Ranger Battalion, and then I was on the Silver Wings free fall team at Fort Benning, and then I was an instructor at 6RTB and did pre-scuba and taught pre-scuba till I got out.
Oh, nice. So when did you get out?
2012.
2012?
Yep. Okay,
and then you said obviously transition was difficult.
Yeah, it was super difficult. I ended up getting divorced, which ensued a which we were talking about right before we got on.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting accused of some pretty egregious accusations from my ex-wife, and it took years to overcome those. She was accusing me of, basically crimes against my children, to put it lightly and not to get too morbid, but
just that statement alone is not that light.
Yeah, it's not. It's and it was everything you could think of, and in the world of law, and as you very well know, you are guilty till proven innocent.
Yep.
And it was horrible. It was local here in Destin, Florida, and I was spit on, had human fecal matter thrown at me in a church parking lot. In all seriousness,
Jesus directed them to do that.
Yeah, in the name of God. It was pretty wild. And it was probably one of I couldn't find a job, couldn't get a job because I was going to court so much, having to talk to investigators. And of course, eventually everything came out, that she was coercing the girls. The girls ended up admitting it. She was found guilty of perjury. But at which point my credit was shot, everything was destroyed. My second marriage was on the rocks at that point because that's how long it took. So we got our divorce. Yeah. The accusations continued even through the divorce into my next marriage, which was several years later. So I was already remarried, had a son. Now that was getting drug into it. When I got remarried, it made her angry. So she kicked up all those accusations again. Which didn't take long. This time I'm like, great, I'm going to go through another 4 years of hell. Nope, took 90 days. They already knew, they knew her MO. It was really bad for her that time. But my second wife, God bless her soul, she was like, I'm done with this. I cannot continue to live my life with someone who's going to continue to do this to us. And,
referring to your ex-wife.
Yeah, my second ex-wife. We're still friends. Everything's great. That divorce was extremely normal, and we're all friends. She's remarried, has 2 new kids, has my son. We're all actually friends. It's amazing. I wish everybody could endure a divorce like that. But yeah, it was absolutely atrocious. And then, but while I was in that marriage, made some bad business decisions because I went from everything was about money, right? So I had to make a lot of money because I had almost like $500,000 worth of legal bills that I had to go after, and I didn't have a way to pay for it. So all my jobs had to be like 6-figure jobs. I couldn't just work my way up in a job. So that's why I was like underwater welder. That's why I was looking at contracting and did contracting. And that's why I did this. And that's why, because it was all these high yielding jobs, if you will. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it got to a point where I was like, I'm a horrible husband. I can't financially provide for my family. I was dealing with a lot of internal PTSD because I was the typical suffer in silence, which all you veterans out there, you need to stop suffering in silence and reach out for help if you need it. I understand it, but it's stupid, and it doesn't make you weaker of a human to ask for help. But I was that guy, and I went out to East Jetty Pass right out here in Destin, took all the medication, which is why I don't take any medication from the VA, downed every single bit of it. And right before, I wrote this suicide note. I keep it on my phone for all the rough times and remind myself of what I'm fighting for and why I would never do that again. And I went unconscious and not to wake up. Now, leading up to that moment, my thought, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. You know, it's over. I'm going to take the long nap. And then it was immediate terror. Felt my heart rate slowing. And I looked up at the stars, and I said, what have I done? I'm about to leave my kids. I'm about to leave. And some other dude's going to be responsible for this. And I went unconscious. And I woke up with a hoopty tan, hood rat tan, 5 tones, because the sun came up and it was now setting again. So I was baking in the sun all day. I woke up with pills stuck to my face, vomit all over the place, and this badass sheriff, he was from the 82nd, because I remember seeing his bracelet. He had a KIA bracelet with the 82nd Airborne patch on it, and he was sternum rubbing me. And he sat there for like 2.5 hours. We just talked. He's like, I'm supposed to like Baker Act you, right? And I was like, I'd really prefer that, not that. He said, well, I won't do it, but you got to promise me you're going to get help. And I was like, I genuinely promise. And I literally, that next day, after I had the worst hangover of my life for the next 24 hours, I went to the VA, started, I don't know how I ended up, but I got a unbelievable counselor, talked everything out, started getting help, stopped all my medication, got off that medication, got mentally right, and then at that point, got a different azimuth on my life, because I realized that my life was self-serving and for everyone else but myself, and was self-serving. Like, I had to make money, more money. And it wasn't about anyone else other than that. And so I started working for a nonprofit called GSMSG, which is the Global Surgical Medical Support Group. And I started going over to our partner nations and teaching people TCCC and how to save themselves in combat and tactics and stuff, and going to these war zones for free, and wasn't taking a paycheck. I'd work my butt off to go do those things, and then I started going to college to join the medical industry, which I love outside of the U.S. I don't love it in the U.S. That's a whole other subject, but I actually left that because we're a very selfish society in the U.S. And then, became a dog trainer. Of all things, I would have never thought in my wildest imagination that I would end up training dogs as a profession, and then the plethora of other stuff that I do.
Were you a dog handler?
No.
Okay, so you weren't a dog handler in
No.
the Ranger Regiment, or
Nope.
Okay,
They didn't even have dogs when I was at Ranger. When I left Ranger Regiment, they were standing up the dog program.
Okay, so this is just something that you were like, hey, I'm going to dive into this.
I did. I got a dog. So when I initially got my first dog, I wanted to start training him because I saw the process, all that stuff. And then my best friend owned a company, and I started mentoring underneath him, and I was really good at it. So I was like, well, I'm going to start doing it on my part-time. So I started doing it, started making quite a bit of money. And my now wife, at the time girlfriend, she's like, dude, you need to do this full time. We could do this full time. And if we put all of our eggs in this basket, I'm sure this would yield very well. And it did. And I went from my backyard to a 12,500 square foot facility and a 7-figure business in the matter of about 2 years.
Wow.
And Yeah, and the only way I can describe our success isn't just an awesome team, but God himself. Being on the right path, doing the right thing for the right purpose. Here you go. Here's your blessing. Because now you're doing what I want you to be doing versus what you want to be doing. That's a huge thing, in my opinion, is like when you're doing what you want to be doing, things won't be as successful. I'm not saying they won't be successful. They won't be as successful if you're doing what God wants you to do. Because if you're doing what God wants you to do and you're on the path that God wants you on, then he can say, here's my full blessing.
Do you think after your suicide attempt, when obviously you're at a very low point, even afterwards when that sheriff found you, do you think you found God there, like sort of reinvigorated a relationship with him?
Yeah, absolutely. Because and I've been asked this question a few times, like what was I after I went unconscious? It was dark. It was cold. There's nothingness. Everyone's like, oh, you're going to see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I mean, I know people have had that experience. That wasn't mine. It was dark. It was scary. There were no dreams. It was genuinely terrifying. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say I wasn't reinvigorated. I knew that I wasn't on the right path and I wasn't doing the right things. So in my brain, it was like, I feel like I was either in holding to go to hell or purgatory.
Yeah.
It was a pretty terrifying. Literally, it was like being in a box. I had nowhere to go. Like I was just there, and there was nothingness. And in some sense, yeah, it was reinvigorated, but really what invigorated my relationship with God was actually ayahuasca.
Okay.
So I did an ayahuasca retreat a few months back, and that was probably the most defining spiritual moment of my life, was going and doing an ayahuasca retreat, because that opened my eyes to a whole, I mean, literally, they call it the third eye. Like, that opened me up to just, because there was something tangible there. Because when I was dying, I had nothingness.
Yeah.
So that I wasn't really able. I knew that I know there's a God. I've always known that. I was raised very spiritually and religiously. So, yeah, I wouldn't per se say it did, but it didn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think, you're in that darkness, but then it sort of gave you a path forward of like, I need to better myself. And
right.
You said it before, like, I need to do it by serving others, not serving myself.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I did a lot of self-service stuff. Even in the military. The military was like and that was one of the biggest things I had after my suicide, was realizing even my military career was self-serving. Uh-huh. Like, SEALs go through a pipeline. You get Halo School, you get Dive School, you get all these schools, right? And then there's a few schools that aren't in your pipeline, like Sniper School, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not a part of their pipeline. Well, in Ranger Regiment, everything is earned. You want to go to Halo School, it's earned. You want to go to Dive School, it's earned. You go to Ranger School, it's earned. And you don't do anything before you go to Ranger School. So you have to fight for all of these schools to go to, and it's always the next bigger and better school you can go to that you can puff your chest out and do whatever, right? And that's not it creates an extremely toxic environment, right? And then, of course, I left the military, and it was the same thing, Commercial dive was about money and prestige. The medical industry was a little bit about that, not as much. But now, my life was then put on trajectory. It was all about the client, all about their dog, all about a better relationship and bettering that animal's life, bettering that veteran's life, bettering that person's life, and it had nothing to do with me, whatsoever.
One of the things I love about I'm involved in 12-step programs.
Okay.
And so one of the things I love about 12-step programs is it's not defining God for you. It's basically saying, going through the 12 steps, that there is a God and it's not you, right? And
Right.
so like throughout my life, my experience was I was always my own God in a sense, right? And even though if you asked me when I was younger, are you a Christian? I'd say, yeah, but I don't want to talk about it. Right. Like,
Right.
Yes, I believe, but I don't want to talk about it. But when I had my experience with him, when he blew me up, it was that day I realized, holy shit, he's actually real. And I didn't know him. Previous to that, I didn't really know God.
Right.
Like I'd say I believed. I'd say, yes, there is one, whatever. But I didn't really know him.
Right.
Do you think like through this, it's like when you took the pills and tried to commit suicide, that you came to the realization that, man, I don't really know him. Like I know there is one, but
I mean, the problem is that when my mental state was so egregious and was so, I don't care who you were. There's nobody that could have talked me out what I was doing. When it happened, it was like I just walked in the bathroom, I grabbed all my medications, I walked out of the house, and at the time, my wife had no idea where I was. Like, she had called all the hospitals, the hotels, trying to find me, and they had no clue where I was. I didn't, and there were no precursors. It was just, I'm done with the failures. I'm just checking out. I'm done. Wrote this extremely long suicide note on my phone, sent it out, and thank God it didn't send out because it got stuck in my outbox. And I was like, probably would have been a lot worse than what it was. But it really, what happened was something that it's hard to describe, because and again, it's like you can't, I felt alone. Mm-hmm. I felt God had left me. I felt like nobody else in the world had the problems that I was going through. It didn't help that I did. I mean, I hate to say this is like the first time I've probably ever said this, but I think probably social media may have helped me, because if I was following the right algorithm and self-help, I would have seen that other people were going through the same things. And it's why January of last year, when one of my dear friends, Neil Curry, killed himself, I was like, that's it. Something inside of me broke. I've lost more friends to suicide than I have in combat now when he passed. And I was like, I'm done holding these stories inside of me and all of these like private struggles that, and my ex-wife accused me of this. I don't care how embarrassing something is. It doesn't matter. I need to let people know my financial struggles, my homelessness, the false accusations, the best, worst military career I could have ever asked for. I'm super proud of what I did, but I also was my own worst enemy. Like all these things, because I don't know who's going to hear this. And if one person DMs me and says, bro, I was thinking about offing myself, which is what happened. I was on Big Energy podcast on SHOT Show, and like a whole slew of people reached out to me and were like, dude, I was literally scrolling and I was going to off myself like tonight, and I'm not now because of your story. And I was like, whoa, like this needs to happen more. We need to be reaching out to our brothers and sisters and letting them know, hey, you are not. And through the process of that, I became closer to God.
Because you're serving others, and helping others through your struggle.
Absolutely.
It's funny, like listening to you, it reminds me of because I went to Catholic school or Catholic high school for a bit before I was booted. But I remember this religion teacher sort of described us what heaven and hell was, and so he said, hell there's this big, huge round table, and everyone's sitting around it, and there's like the best food you can think of. in the middle of the table, like everything. It's just like the most delicious like food that anybody's ever wanted, and everybody on the outside that's sitting on the outside of the table have their arms or spoons, like these long, like they don't have hands, or it's just a huge spoon that can reach into the food. But yet everybody at that table in hell is starving, and they're all yelling at each other, you know, fighting each other, and it's because they cannot bring the spoon to their mouth, right? Because it extends so long. And he's like, that's what hell is. Everyone's trying to feed themselves. Like heaven is the same exact scenario, except everybody is fat, happy, and full and laughing because they are feeding the person next to them with their hand. So they're serving each other. And I was like,
ooh,
that's just, as you were talking, it sort of reminded me of that. And I'm like, and yeah, that's a perfect description. It's like you will find God once you stop trying to serve yourself and start serving others. But you need to seek God out every day to do that. Like that every morning you need to ask him, how can I best serve my family, my friends, my community? You know, show me that, you know, I don't know the way, but show me. And he always does in some form or fashion. Like through that day, you end up helping somebody else. So yeah,
it's crazy because, you know, I have so many business examples where it's like, and you've seen me do it. Like, I'm like, hey, yeah, if you ever need any help, let me know. And I tell people stuff like that. I'll train people's dogs for free. I do stuff all the time. If I see an opportunity where someone genuinely needs help, or, you know, or, hey, I need this, or, hey, can you, and I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. And they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. And through that, either an opportunity to share the word of God and or an astronomical business opportunity presents itself, comes available because of your selflessness in that moment. Because my objective is not to take somebody's money. My objective is there may be a little bit of self-serving, you know, it's like, yeah, if you want me to help you shoot and learn to shoot, yeah, what's self-serving about that? I love to shoot, so I'm going to get to go to the range, and now it's an excuse for me to go sling some lead and teach somebody something that I absolutely love. But that's as far as that self-servingness goes. It's not, you know, so, you know, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works. When you get out of your own way, right? Like when you when I stop looking at myself and begin to just look to others and using what God gives you to help others and focusing on them, that like the other stuff kind of falls in place. It's not a prosperity, you know, like, hey, you go and you serve other people, you're just going to become multi-millionaire, blah, blah, blah. It's like, man, some of the biggest blessings are how you feel inside, like that freedom of being so self-focused, of trying to make money. It's like that stuff just comes along. Your bills get paid, the things happen, everything begins to fall in line.
Absolutely. It was really crazy. I had gotten behind on child support. This is obviously post-suicide, several years. I was just getting into the dog stuff, and I was almost completely 100% debt-free. And because of my court battle, I had some child support issues going on there. And, you know, I was like just putting every last dollar I could. And all of this, I'm all up to date. And all of a sudden I got this letter in the mail out of nowhere. And it was like, you owe so many hundreds of dollars to child support. And if you don't pay it, you're going to lose your driver's license. And I'm like, that makes no sense. What, are you kidding me? And I was like, I didn't have a paycheck coming in for a certain amount of time. And I was like, this is insane. And I'm like, looking at all my stuff, and I'm like, you know, I'm for the most part a minimalist. I'm like, I don't really have anything I can sell. And like, all right. And it was bad. My wife, she was still active duty Air Force, and it's not her responsibility, so I was going to burden her with it. She's gone. I dropped on my knees, and I was like, God, I don't know what to do. Like, I need you to provide for me now, and I need something fast. And I was like sitting there, and there was a knock on my door. And I'm literally in my living room in Ranger panties, no shirt. So I'm like, looking at my watch, it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. He's like, hey, I have some certified mail for you. And I'm like, okay. So I signed for it, open it up, and it's a check and it was shy like $50.23, something like that. I don't remember the exact number. And I was like, oh my God. And I literally like started to cry. I'm like, thank you. What amazing response time, And I was like, now I got to figure out only $53. This is amazing. Couldn't really figure it out. I was like, hey, I was contemplating talking to my wife, and right before she got home, I got another knock on the door, and they had written the check wrong, and the $50.53, the exact amount that I needed, came that afternoon.
That's pretty wild.
And I was like, well, if you don't believe in God, there you have it. Like to the penny, it was unbelievable. And then at that point, I was telling my wife, I was like, you're not going to believe this. She's like, are you serious? I'm like, here's the letter. Here's the check that came in today. Do the math for me quickly. Seriously, do the math. I'm a Ranger. I can't count it. So,
Are we good?
Are we good? But I was like, whoa. And it was all good. Everything was good. And then to come to find out that the letter was not as bad as it seemed. And it was like a warning, and it was just, it auto-produced, and I had freaked out for nothing. But I gave it to God, and God quite literally came through in a timely fashion to the penny.
That's pretty wild.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you have the 22, right?
Yeah,
Rescue
Rescue
Foundation.
22.
And then what else? You're part of a couple other foundations, right?
So only one other. So we just started Hunters and Heroes.
Yeah. So explain that.
So that's a derivative of kind of the stories. So there are so many things out there for veterans. There's hundreds of organizations. 5 more could come up tomorrow, and there's still not enough. I wanted to start something that was, one, unique, that told a story, and also helped people get into hobbies, that they would otherwise not have an opportunity to do, and learn, at the same time. And so after the podcast in January that I did, where everyone was like, oh my God, like your story helped me, I was like, well, I know there's more people out there, but I didn't want it to be veteran-centric. And I was sitting doing my normal Sunday thing, which is watching hunting shows, and Meat Eater to be exact. And I was like, man, I really love this, but it's, always the same thing for the most part, right? They go out, they're hunting an elk, they're hunting a ram. The game changes, but the premise doesn't, right? It's like, what if we have like a Sean Ryan meets Meat Eater, and we're telling a story while they're on the hunt. They're talking about it. We have a moment where we're sitting around a fire, and we podcast that up, and we mic them up, and we talk about the taboo items that we never talk about. Their suicide attempts, their alcoholism, their substance abuse problems, their marriage fallacies. They're all these things that they're the stuff that's bad that nobody ever wants to talk about. But then we talk about also how they are able to overcome and persevere through those things. And it's not just veterans. We're talking to people like nurse practitioners, police officers, firefighters, doctors, flight nurses, teachers, because a hero is not centric to anything. A hero could be literally anybody. And PTSD is not centric to us veterans. I'd hate to say it, like one of the flight nurses that we did a service dog for, there are no nonprofits out there for them to be able to get service dogs or get really a lot of help that I know of. If there is, please let us know, so I can put it out to the world. But he told a story about having to respond to a child who reached up while its mom was cooking and poured hot boiling oil all over the top of him. And when they landed the life flight on the cul-de-sac, the baby ran out of the house because the mom couldn't hold the baby when they were, and all of the skin sloughed off, he said. and its facial, all of its nose and ears were gone. And in its last breath, it said, "Save me." And the child died in his arms. It broke me. And I mean, I have very similar stories that happened to me in combat, but this happened in the United States, right? So for me to go and say, my PTSD is different than his PTSD is pretty asinine. Like, that's insane. And that's one story of his. Like, he had tons more that he told me over the course of our time. And he's actually a really good friend of mine now. It has been. But I can't imagine what these firefighters and some of these guys see at car accidents and stuff like that. And there's nothing out there for them. And not to mention, they get paid shit. So for them to go on an elk hunt, or for them to go have an experience like that normally costs, because they have to get travel, they have to get out there, pay for the tags, all that stuff. There's nothing out there for them to get to do that and get away and to actually heal. So I was like, well, I want to start a TV show that does that, a podcast TV show, and a nonprofit that's going to take these guys out. And they don't have to like tell their story. They don't have to do that. You know, that's up to them if they want to share that. But I definitely encourage that. And so we are in the process. It's an actual nonprofit. We just started planning for our first 5 heroes to go out on hunts. We have some amazing title sponsors: Half Ace Blaze, Andrew Beto, our Beto.
Beto, the man.
Beto, the man. He's one of our title sponsors. He's making a knife for every hero that goes out on a hunt to commemorate that hunt. It's so cool. So cool. Like, he didn't even hesitate. Such an awesome dude. We have Seekins rifles. We have and a few other, forgive me, I'm drawing blanks right now, but that are helping us, Vortex, that are all helping this actually come to fruition. And it's pretty amazing, the overwhelmingness that we had for people to start donating money to make these productions happen, to get these stories out there for them to enjoy watching an awesome hunt with an awesome story to go with it.
Yeah. Have you been doing this yet, or is this?
We've taken one person out.
How'd that go?
Amazing, which is so cool, because the individual had never been hunting in general. Yeah. Other than overseas humans. So, and it was something that he got to do. His name was Jonathan Belton. He was a recon Marine, and he got to go on a hunt with Rome Fitzpatrick with Rome's Legendary Outdoors, which I'm sure you know Rome. Yeah. And it was just so awesome. And he's like, "You just created an entire hobby for me."
Did you find that he was able to like open up
immensely
in that environment?
Absolutely. Like, it's just one of those, it's
even with the cameras and everything, like I think that is huge, getting them in an outdoor environment,
relaxed,
having a purpose, which is hunting the animal. But then also, I mean, I'm sure you take away all distractions like phones and this and that. I mean, that right there is step number 1 of like, hey, you want to start healing, remove distractions, and then get them doing something that's purposeful, which is hunting, which is also something that they're accustomed to. Even though this guy, I was the same way. Like, I had never been hunting until I got out.
Right.
And the first time I went, I was like, oh, I feel like me again. Like, I feel a part of me again that I, thought was gone, which is like, I'm hunting something. I have a purpose. Yep. But then
simplicity of it.
Yes. And you also have no distractions. My phone was gone for a week, and you literally, I came out of that week. This is the first time I went hunting. I'm like, dude, I feel like a new man again, you know? And so that is awesome. That's a great concept, is taking those guys and putting them in that environment. But at the same time, getting them to open up and tell their stories, because, believe it or not, and just like you said before, I mean, when I got out, that's sort of what helped me too. And I don't like saying social media is like a good thing, but it is. There's good and bad from it, but the good part of it, especially with like podcasts or, certain people you follow, if people are out there telling their stories and like, dude, this is what I'm going through, believe me, it resonates with more people than you know, because we all deal with the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're a veteran, first responder, law enforcement, firefighter. Our jobs are to go into traumatic situations, do our job, and then expect to do it again the next day, right? Yep. Which a lot of us hold that baggage in, and so
suffer in silence.
Exactly. So it does take people to be more outspoken and be like, dude, yeah, this is what I suffer from, and be vulnerable. And I've had the same experience too as you did, where people have come up to me like, dude, I was thinking about taking my life, and I listened to your podcast, and it helped me, push forward. Which to me, I mean, I almost started. That was at SHOT Show as well last year, and it was like it was a young kid, 20-something years old. And yeah, like I almost started crying right there, just because it's like it's overwhelming to know that like your voice made a difference
in someone else's
into
life.
someone else, like someone you had no clue. You're like, dude, that is in a completely different part of the country, and it's not even the dude wasn't even a veteran. He was a young child.
Yeah.
And so that right there is huge, and I think there needs to be more of that.
Man, and that's crazy. I mean, they're so young.
Yeah.
To have experienced, something in life that traumatic that makes them think that if there's one thing I can say, a permanent solution to let me tell you, a very temporary problem is not the answer. And you guys out there have to understand is that I can promise you, no matter how bad it is, I was accused of sexually harming my daughters. I was accused of all kinds of crap, to include financial stress, to include my PTSD from the military, to include all these things, right? I was able to overcome all of that tenfold and become successful. But if I had succeeded at killing myself in 2014 or 15, whatever it was, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
I was choosing a permanent solution for an extremely temporary problem. And okay, I know that a couple years may be, seem like a long time, but in the scheme of your life, it's this much. It's maybe even this much. It's you don't know what's around the next corner. And what's so awesome about life is that when you start living for purpose and the correct purpose, you don't know what's around that next corner. And this last 4 months, I've had so many astronomical opportunities that have been dropped in my lap that just are unbelievable blessings that I was like, whoa, where did this come from? So if you choose that permanent solution for that temporary problem, you're never going to get to experience that.
Yeah. You never know how many people you're going to help and affect. I think there's a lot of young guys that are kind of purposeless, directionless, and then they look to you, Eddie, they look to you and they're like, man, like your words can make such an impact on them,
And I feel blessed that Eddie and I both have platforms that get to combat this, number one. And number two is, helping people understand that, when you make a decision like that, after you're gone, the problems that you were suffering from before, you've now
transferred over to
your children, your wife, and the people that love you. The very people you think that don't love you now have to bear the burden for the rest of their life. And you've created a generational demon, because if you have children, they're going to go, well, my mom or my dad did it.
Well, there's a study, it's like if your parents, one of them had killed suicide, you're more likely to do so when you get older as well.
That's right.
It's the same thing like with divorce, right? Like if your parents are divorced, you're more likely to not take marriage as a sanctity and get divorced as well, because that's what you've raised with and seen. So, yeah, you're right. It's a very, and I have like my emotions ebb and flow on suicide because I'm the same way. Like I've had more friends now, take their lives, and at first it was like over the past 5 years, you're like, dude, you feel bad, and you're like, is there, something I could have done or this and that. But then after so many dudes do it, I just started getting angry, and I'm like, you're such a pussy, dude. Like, why? Like,
Right.
But that's not the right answer either. Like, there has to be a happy medium, because it does make me angry when guys do it. And it's not even guys that I know. It's like other dudes I see, veterans taking their lives. I'm like, what? That is like the most selfish act on the planet, because you now have just transferred all of your pain onto your friends and family. And there was hope. There was an answer. You could have fixed yourself, but I have to like sort of keep myself from taking that sort of negative, aggressive approach. And it's like, okay, well, what can we do? Like, then you have to problem solve. Like, how can we mitigate this from happening? And I mean, I love the way, from what you're doing, from speaking out. I have my friend Johnny Wilson, who we just did that big race, but it was to promote his app to mitigate veteran suicide, which I think is huge. But that's sort of the step we all need to go into. Instead of being emotionally reactionary to everything, we have to sit back, just like we do when planning an operation. It's like, okay, we have these issues on target. Like, how can we best approach this to mitigate, risk to ourselves, but also accomplish the mission and execute the enemy, right? And
that's it.
I think we have to treat.
What's the why?
Yes, we have to treat the veteran suicide epidemic the same way. So I mean, I'm glad you're out there doing it, and I'm glad to see other individuals sort of opening up and talking about it. And
and again, like I've said 100 times, it's not centric to just veterans. We've got first responders and people who are killing themselves at just a high rate as our veterans are. It's just we're just in the limelight more because we just walked out of the longest war in history, and it's going to get worse for us because of how we walked out of the war. But don't worry, you guys out there, there's going to be another one soon. So unfortunately,
war is inevitable.
It is inevitable.
Yeah.
So,
hey, thank you so much, man. You came, the listeners don't know this, but you dropped everything at we literally texted you like 5 days ago or so, and you were like, hey, day after Christmas, I'll be there.
Yeah.
And coming in and sharing stuff. I hope a lot of people get a lot from this.
Yeah.
I hope so too.
And I'll say this, dude, I spent that 2 weeks with you, and yeah, you are a loudmouth.
Yeah.
For sure. But what hit home to me is on the graduation day when you guys were done, I saw you with your family and your daughters, and the way that you treated them, and the way, like, just the love they had for you. And honestly, that's what I was like, this dude's a good dude, man. Like,
I appreciate
and that's how I judge a lot of people, is how they act around their families and how their families treat them, man. And I saw it. You're a good human being. And so
I appreciate that.
I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story.
Absolutely, brother. I appreciate it.
All right. Out.